Hey, Sunny here, and today I'm going to be talking about Heat Abnormal again. I already have a video on the song and its 3D MV, which you may or may not have already seen, but this time I'm going to be talking about Proseka's 2D MVs for the song. Yes, that's 2D MVs plural, because we have two of them. There's the full version of Nightcord's cover, and then we got a surprise cover by Wondershow, which was released on April Fool's Day 2026. And I cannot stress enough just how stunning both of these MVs are. Like, we have 3 proseka MVs for Heat Abnormal now, and all 3 of them present the song in a new and creative way. Netsu Ijo, or Heat Abnormal in English, is a song by Iowa, which was released in October of 2022. The song is sung by the Utao Adachi Rei, who is a robot both lore-wise and, literally. What makes Adachi Rei unique is the fact that her voice is entirely synthetic, meaning that she has no human voice provider. Heat Abnormal can of course be interpreted in many different ways, but one of the most common interpretations is that the song depicts Rei listening to the last recordings of humanity before the Earth was destroyed, either by war, climate change, a meteor, or some other uncontrollable force. Basically, humanity is dead and only robots remain to roam the desert wasteland of what was once Earth. It's not a very uplifting song. In Nightcord's 3D MV, we get to see a more human side to the song. The girls are seen panicking, running about, and trying their hardest to ignore the destruction that's taking place around them. In this MV, Kaito takes the place of the tragedy, or the uncontrollable force that the girls must face. And this ties in with his role in the Sekai, as Kaito is always the first one to push Nightcord to face their troubles and do something about it. Throughout the MV, Kaito is seen making stern expressions at the camera and doesn't look away from the tragedy that's unfolding behind them. He's portrayed very coldly in this MV to hammer home the fact that he isn't human, which you'll quickly see is directly contrasted in Nightcord's 2D MV. This MV is illustrated by Mitsubachi, whose art style is really cool, and the video itself is put together by Misawa Sakura and Suika. Another thing to note is that this MV was released on the 14th of February, which is of course Valentine's Day, but it is also one of Kaito's 2 birthdays. And what a song to celebrate with, am I right? While the 3D MV does put a lot of focus on Mizuki, the 2D MV has convinced me that this cover is actually supposed to be centered around Kaito, which is interesting as the Vocaloids in Proseka don't really get much development, so it's cool seeing Nightcord Kaito get explored further here. Instead of opening with a direct reference to the original MV, we instead open with Kaito. And immediately we can see that his expression is very different from what we are used to seeing from him. He looks pained and is holding an orb which displays each of the Nightcord members. During this part, some text is shown on the screen that reads, "If life had no end, who would despair of their fate? Life is wonderful, but the end of life is death." Now, this appears to be a combination of 2 different quotes, one from Swinburne's Ballad of Burden, and one from the philosopher Vulvanag. And I couldn't find this one in English, but here it is in Japanese. We can see a tree appear in the orb as Kaito cradles it close to his chest. This tree is what formed in each of the Sekais during their World Link events, and it is born from all the members' various emotions and nurtured by their happiness. So here it is being used as a sign that Kaito is remembering his past memories in the empty Sekai. Kaito then looks directly at the camera and the tree is shown alongside Nightcord, who are now in boxes. Now these boxes could be made out of a couple different things, like glass or ice, but I personally think they're supposed to be salt crystals. Salt crystals naturally form in a cube shape, and this could tie in with the lyric about cells returning to the ocean. I think they're also supposed to be a more abstract representation of memory data, cause there's also a digital theme going on. We get a closer look at Mizuki first, and we can see that she has vines going straight through her heart. She's also tightly plugging up her ears, not wanting to hear a word of what anybody is saying. And this of course ties in with Mizuki's main conflict of being afraid to open up her heart to others, because she fears being rejected or treated differently. During this sequence, we can even see some eyes appear, like in Bake no Hana, and then an eye appears directly over her face, making her expression look like a desperate attempt to block out the judgmental gazes from other people. Chains appear when Kanade mentions death approaching, but no matter how hard they try to erase it, they can't escape. Next we get a closer look at Enna, who has both of her arms bound by the vines. She wears a pained expression and looks as though she's given up. Enna's main conflict is her complicated relationship with art, and she needs her hands to paint. But since they're bound, she isn't able to create anything. For a split second in the background here, it says #8888cc, not found 404. And this is the hex code for MacLeod's character color. I don't know why that's there during Enna's part, but it is. Then during the something is coming very soon part, a bunch of graphs are shown, perhaps tracking the progress of the meteor that is approaching Earth. On the sides of the screen we can see a countdown to the impact as well. Next we see MacLeod, and she has her legs bound. This is a pretty common visual for MacLeod, as vines are used to represent her mother. MacLeod's main conflict is freeing herself from her mother's influence and living her life however she wants to. She doesn't look pained, but instead peaceful, as if she's resigned herself to this fate of being tied down forever. The screen glitches a bit before glitching out entirely, with errors appearing all over the screen. And for a split second, MacLeod's name appears within these errors. And this of course can tie in with how MacLeod believes there's something wrong with her, and that she's a failure for always causing her mother to suffer. Which isn't true, but that's just what MacLeod feels. It's also an effect that's very reminiscent of Bug. Lastly, we have Kanade. And I love this little visual that we get here. Kanade only has one of her hands bound, and your first thought might be that this is like Enna, where her hand being bound means that she can't create anymore. However, there are many instances where Kanade is shown to be left-handed. She may even be ambidextrous, so just having one of her hands tied up probably wouldn't stop her. So instead, let's consider her pose. She looks to be asleep and her body is limp, as if she's about to fall. But this vine is the only thing keeping her upright. Kanade's main conflict is her survivor's guilt and savior complex. Though she does a good job of hiding it, Kanade also wants to disappear. But the only thing that's keeping her around is the fact that her dad told her to keep making music, as well as her desire to make a song to save MacLeod. Kanade isn't living for herself, but instead for others, tirelessly continuing to make songs for the sake of other people in hopes that it will also be her own salvation. When the lyrics mention an eternal paradise that'll save us, a bright beam of light shines down on Kanade, but then the following lyric is about this ship exploding, and Kanade's crystal appears to shatter. During the section with the beam of light, the lines behind Kanade sort of resemble sheet music as well, and there's paper scattered around her, representing all of the countless songs that she's made in an attempt to save other people. But in the context of this song, just as the ship explodes, her songs fail to save anyone, and there's no salvation to be found. This time as the black star approaches, Kanade stays in the center of the screen, and Kaito finishes the lyric, staring directly at us again with a worried expression. We reach the chorus and get a bunch of abstract visuals, as the cubes move around and the screen flashes with orange, foreshadowing the abnormal heat that is still to come. When MacLeod says the line about God, the word demiurge appears briefly in the middle of the screen. Now, I am not knowledgeable enough to fully explain what a demiurge is exactly, but from what I understand, it's a deity that's in charge of creating and maintaining the physical universe. So the concept coming up here is obviously a reference to the history that was built by God returning to sand. You can even see the earth appear briefly here too. Then the cubes fall into Kaito's hands and it cycles through the girls before leaving him staring at his own empty hands. And I think this is implying that the humans are already gone, and what we're seeing here is Kaito clinging on to the memories of them. There are also some crazy details that appear very quickly on the screen here. Like, I had to go frame by frame through this section to even catch some of them. I titled this video overanalysing for a reason, okay? First, when Kanade and MacLeod fall into Kaito's hands, undefined emotion detected, burning, is written on the side of the screen. There are also ominous coordinates, which I tried to search and it just gave me a random street in Kyoto. So unless I'm searching it wrong, the editor probably just chose something random in Japan. But like, I saw this and I was like, damn, is this an ARG now? I went to Japan to find the heat abnormal coordinates. When Enna and Mizuki appear, there's clocks in the corner of the screen. And when they disappear, it says 3 AM at the top left. But sometimes it also says 33 AM, but it switches out and says timed out error, ear, yes, no, expires in 13 seconds. There's 2 kanji here, which I believe is this word in Chinese. Then there's a date that looks like it reads April 22nd, but I can't really make out the numbers. And then the coolest part, in my opinion, is this program log that reads local disk user protocol, issues, anxiety, fix, emotions, faulty, failure, success, feelings, issues, sadness, pain, visibility loss, failure, hope.exe, broken. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. Since Kaito is the only robot, this is probably his program log, but this log showing up does also coincide with when Mafuyu is on the screen. What stands out to me is that Kaito is trying to fix all of these negative emotions. Emotions that robots aren't even supposed to have in the first place. He's also experiencing visibility loss, which could explain why the screen is covered in noise and distorted visuals when we're in Kaito's POV. And lastly, hope.exe is broken, meaning that all hope has been lost for the humans, and there's nothing that Kaito can do to save them anymore. Then we get a sequence showing all of Nightcord again, as the background gets darker, as if they're floating around at the bottom of the ocean. The cubes behind them are floating upwards though, and when we get to Kanade, she's lifted up alongside them, pulling her out of the ocean. We reach the third verse, and here we get shots of all the girls in front of what I assume is a clock. And not only that, but each of them wake up one by one, no longer being frozen inside of the salt cubes. Mizuki gets the lyric about trying her best to ignore the screams, and during this part the background switches between blue and pink, which are colours that have been associated with Mizuki many times, as it's an easy way to depict her struggles with gender. The camera also jolts closer to her as she desperately tries to cover her ears and block out the cries. Then we see Kanade dramatically open her eyes, as if she snapped awake the moment she heard her friends in pain. She was like, oh, someone needs saving. I love the line distribution here, as Kanade gets the lyric about convincing herself that giving up on happiness is a virtue, which is very Kofuku-kei coded, and then Mafuyu completes the lyric of the fish swimming in her consciousness. Mafuyu's line is such a run-on sentence as well, yet Tanabe Rui manages to sing it so beautifully. The visuals here are interesting as the center of the screen is broken and a film reel has appeared in the background. In the shards of the glass, Nightcord are accented with orange, while Kaito remains monochrome. And when it's said that the black star is looking, an eye ominously appears behind the lyrics, quite literally looking at us, the viewer. Before the full version of the cover was out, I thought for sure that Mafuyu or Mizuki would get the sigh, but to my surprise, it's Kaito who sighs. I personally interpret this sigh as being the moment that the person on the recording realized it was the end, and that there was no hope for them to survive. And the visual we get along with the sigh here is Kaito looking wide-eyed and fearful. First off, I love this expression just because of how unexpected it is for Nightcord Kaito to make it. This guy is always scowling and acting like he doesn't care, and yet here he is absolutely terrified of the disaster that's about to occur. And it once again directly contrasts to the 3D MV, where Kaito was calm and collected the entire time. I also like the juxtaposition of the robot that isn't supposed to have emotions, being the one who shows the most emotion throughout this MV. Then during the instrumental, the orange that we'd only gotten glimpses of before takes over the colour palette completely, as each of the girls begin to burn with an abnormal amount of heat. To me it looks as though they're dissolving into data or something like that. It's like they've been dropped into a volcano. A black box drops into water and then an hourglass appears, reminding them that their time is running out. However, we then see a clock that's turning in reverse, which would imply that we're going back in time. A film reel snakes across the screen and we see Kaito again. replaying all of the memories of Nightcord in his head. But then we see him putting down this remnant of the film reel, maybe implying that those times are long gone and that he can't even protect the memories of them anymore. This also ties in with the next set of lyrics, which is about recording the monologue with nowhere to send it to. So Kaito is clinging onto these memories with nowhere to send them. The song slows down and all of the singers did such a great job with the vocals here. Like, they really nailed the haunting tone. As we travel through these picture frames, we see the vines release Nightcord one by one, freeing them from their troubles. And this would be a good thing. However, we can see that in the reflection of Kaito's eye, a meteor is fast approaching. The meteor lands in Kaito's outstretched hand, and we are greeted with a visual that reads a lot more like Heat Abnormal. A giant sun sits behind them, and the landscape is reminiscent of what we see in the 3D MV. Nightcord have all been freed from their restraints, and yet they all still look down at their palms in disbelief. And not to get too dark, but the way I interpret this is that, faced with the end of the world, none of those previous problems matter anymore. Like, they're free from all of their worries because none of it matters when the world's about to end. And that's why they just stare down at their hands. They may be free, but they're still powerless to stop the disaster that's occurring around them. When Mizuki mentions the swallows flying overhead, the word trajectory appears. We actually get to see the swallows flying overhead as well. And then interestingly, Kaito is shown within the black star, and he stares directly at us with glowing eyes. And this is probably the closest he gets to fulfilling the same role that he did in the 3D MV. The way Kaito is the only one looking directly at the calamity is also the same here. Enna is the one who gets the line about their hands being dirtied with hope, and as she proposes a question, there's this really cool visual of the black star coming forwards and then turning into Kaito's eye. If you look at the way the sun turns into like this spiral, it also resembles a massive eye. And now I believe we are in Kaito vision again, as the screen glitches out and focuses on everyone's hands. And then once we reach the end of this tunnel, Kaito gets his solo. I mentioned this in my other video, but probably my favourite detail in this cover is the fact that Kaito gets to sing the entire last part by himself. While the humans could still do a decent job of keeping up with the song, some parts are too fast for them and they need to switch between the singers. Whereas Kaito is a Vocaloid who doesn't need to breathe, so he can just sing this entire last part by himself. And in the full version of the cover, this is only made even more impactful as it takes even longer for Kaito to sing. From the sigh onwards to this final part, Kaito doesn't say a single word. It isn't until humanity is gone that he sings again, being the only one left to finish the song. The sun in the background has turned into more of an imposing spiral, and the city has been completely destroyed. Kaito focuses on everyone's faces now, his vision still deteriorating. And then, as the meteor approaches, each of Nightcord look to the camera, all of them finally looking up from their hands and acknowledging what's going on. I don't know if this is just a design choice or an Easter egg or what, but Enna is the only one with orange pupils here. And she didn't have orange pupils before, so I'm not sure what's going on there. Enna is actually a robot theory. We get one last look at Kaito freaking out before the meteor makes its impact, the light splitting off Kaito's hand and landing into everyone else's. Nightcord glance back to their empty hands and disappear one by one, and the order that they disappear is the same as in the 3D MV. Kaito being the last one to disappear, as without humans, Vocaloids can't sing, so he no longer serves a purpose anymore. Then lastly, we get a direct reference to the original MV and end on that recording device and a flower. And I believe this flower to be a Miyoko Wasurete, which is a type of aster that can mean farewell or until we meet again in flower language. I also want to mention the cool logo for the song title in the credits here. Like, the spooky eyeball in the kanji is such a neat touch. So needless to say that I absolutely adore this MV. Like, whoever came up with the concept and storyboards has a massive brain. Like, the song is called Heat Abnormal, and it's about the world burning up due to said heat, and yet the majority of this MV is cold and dull in colour. More like it's set at the bottom of the ocean, which is very fitting for nightcord. And I just want to read out this comment that I found on the video. The original song gave me the impression of Ray-chan listening to the records of despair left behind by humanity in a post-apocalyptic world. However, the N25 version is more like seeing 4 girls joining hands in a dying world, along with an android who will continue to protect the memories of those girls when they were alive until the very end. Nightcord Kaito can be harsh and acts like he doesn't care most of the time, but it's pretty clear that he does actually care deeply about Nightcord and the rest of the inhabitants of the Sekai. Kaito was born from Mafuyu's repressed emotions, her anger specifically, so it makes sense that he pushes everyone to face their troubles and not suppress their own emotions. He's very direct about it, yes, but it does come from a place of wanting to see the girls move forwards and live happier lives. And this role of his ties in with Heat Abnormal if you look at the nightcord version in a less literal sense. Like, instead of the Black Star being the end of the world, it could instead be the troubles that the girls need to face in their lives. So Kaito is trying to convince them to face it and stop looking away from their reality. However, this tough love method isn't always the answer, and we have seen this occur in the story before. In the card set for Path of Thorns, Kaito wears a frustrated expression since his advice wasn't able to help Mizuki, and he perhaps realized that being so harsh on her probably wasn't the correct way to go about things, so he regrets it. And I think a similar sentiment is being shown here. Kaito regrets not being able to save the girls, and all he can do now is cling to the memories of them. Something that I completely forgot to mention in my other video is the fact that in the 3D MV, Kaito is wearing his outfit from Passion at 25 o'clock, and I think this connection is even more relevant here. Passion at 25 o'clock is basically Kanade writing a letter to her future self, wondering what her life will be like as a grown-up, as well as wondering if she'll be able to look back on the past with a smile. So the song has themes of looking towards the future, while also being about looking back on the past. Kaito even gets this line specifically. And it's also another MV where the landscape starts off grey and desolate, but is eventually dyed orange by a beautiful sunset. However, this sunset still looks kind of foreboding, and this is because at the time of writing this song, Kanade still hasn't made up her mind to live for herself yet, so you can see that it's like a troubled sky. So just like Passion at 25 o'clock has elements of looking back on the past, Kaito is doing the same thing here in Heat Abnormal. Except here it's a lot more depressing since Nightcord and the rest of the humans are already gone. So that's Nightcord's 2D MV, but what about wonder shows? Well, I'm glad you asked, because that's what we're looking at next. Every year for April Fool's Day, Proseka release special covers with their own music videos. Usually these covers consist of a shuffled unit, and this can lead to some characters singing songs that they usually wouldn't. This year, however, Proseka decided to do these covers a little differently, as they were no longer shuffle units, but instead just the usual units covering different songs. And that's how we have a Wonderland's Showtime cover of Heat Abnormal. I honestly couldn't believe my eyes when I saw the thumbnail for this cover appear in my sub box. Like, I'd sat down ready to see what wacky character combinations we'd get this time, only to be flashbanged by Heat Abnormal Wondershow, and all I could do was sit there in disbelief for like a minute straight. And then when I finally clicked the video and watched it, I was in awe of how creative they were with the visuals yet again. Cause the thing with Wondershow's cover is that this is a full-blown AU. For the April Fool's event, each unit was given a different fictional race, and Wondershow were turned into robots. Here is the description for their April Fool's unit, RoboPiece. A chaotic unit of robots. We exist to put a smile on everyone's faces, which means that it's showtime again today. You better look forward to our energetic performance. So they're still pretty similar to regular Wondershow, it's just that they're all Nene Robos now. And technically RoboPiece is who we see in the Heat Abnormal cover, but like, you could look at it either way. Which means we now have the original song, which is from the perspective of a robot who is relaying the records of humanity to us, the Nightcord cover, which is from the perspective of the humans and their struggle to survive, and now the Wondershow cover, which is back to being from the perspective of robots again. But these robots exist to perform and make humans smile. Wondershow's 2D MV is illustrated by Yoda, who you may know from some of Azari's songs, and the video itself is put together by Saimo. Right off the bat, before the song even starts, we get a monitor that displays the number 36.50. And right underneath this, it reads, upper temperature limit 100 degrees Celsius. So this is the heat monitor within all of the robots. And 36.5 degrees Celsius would be considered a normal human body temperature. Wondershow appear one by one holding a recorder like Ray in the original MV, but their faces are covered by this symbol. This symbol appears a lot throughout the MV, but I'm not entirely sure what it's supposed to be. Throughout this section, beneath the lyrics, there's text written like code that specifies which lyric is being said. The singer's ID is also written on the right here. When Nene disappears, we can see an error on the side. Her temperature has risen to 41 degrees, and we can see a processing chip. And the words that I can make out on this thing read CPU something core Wonderland's Showtime something cover MV, which is a cute detail. After Tsukasa's line, we cut to a bookshelf filled with tapes, and these are probably videotapes. After Rui, we see a printout of a circuit board, and it appears that this section needs repairs. Those same tapes from before are seen sitting on this table as well. Then we see a camera with Wonderland Showtime written on it. The switch is in the on position too. And this is why I believe those tapes are videotapes, since they were probably all filmed with this camera. Behind the camera are design sheets for Rin, and we'll get a better look at these papers soon. Next we cut to an ominous black hole, which resembles what Kaito saw at the end of Nightcord's 2D MV. The UI has changed too, as we're now looking through a camera that's recording. There is the date this video was posted in the bottom left, and a battery icon in the top right. The circuit board appears, and then we zoom into it and cut to the processing chip again. So this must be the component that needs repairs. As Rin says to erase it, countless errors appear, and we zoom out to see a heart encapsulate the chip. So like this processing chip is symbolically the robot's hearts. The internal temperature has also risen a lot higher. We jump cut out of the computer and go through Wondershow one by one again. There's these little USB drives in each of their character colors along the bottom of the screen, as various windows keep popping up and closing. Then we finally get a glimpse of everyone's faces, and they're very glum. If we take the lyrics into account, this could be Wondershow listening to the last recordings of humanity, and them realizing that an end that even they can't escape is approaching. More errors appear, and their temperature has exceeded 60 degrees. Also, I just quickly want to mention how well Kino Hina sings in this cover. Like, we don't usually get to hear this lower, more serious tone from Emu, but she really nails it here. During this section, we get a better look at everyone's design sheets. Looking at Emu's here, it reads, character design, female, height 152 centimeters, birth 9th of September, pollution resistance, dust resistance, waterproof, corrosion resistance. Lifespan 300 years. And it also says like humanoid on the side of these sheets. There's also the recording device and camera on the table, along with some tapes that are labelled memories. And these tapes look like cassette tapes. We get this cool visual of each character's eye appearing in this thing as the screen fills up with nothing but errors. Emu gets the lyric about there being an eternal paradise, which fits because she's a bundle of positivity. However, she's not wearing her characteristic smile here. None of Wondershow are, as they glance away from the viewer with eyes full of concern. The errors continue to multiply, and Rin looks down as if she knows what's coming next. Here we see a bunch of tapes pile up on top of the camera, all of them being labelled memories. And I think these are either recordings of RoboPiece's shows, or the memories of the humans that these robots were designed after. But I'll get into that crack theory a little later. As the black star looks down at them, we can see this massive black hole eyeball thing in the sky, which obviously can't be a good thing. Their internal temperature is now over 70 degrees, which is getting very close to that 100 degrees limit. And now we hit the chorus, and in complete contrast to Nightcord, all of Wondershow break out into smiles, as if they don't even care about the calamity that's occurring behind them. I love that it's Emu who gets the line about the bell of farewell tolling, since she knows that Wondershow won't last forever, and that one day her friends will have to move on to fulfill their dreams. As she says this, everyone turns into silhouettes, with selection boxes that are their character colours around them. A whole bunch of sun icons pop up and fall into the processing chip, indicating that the heat is perhaps getting a bit abnormal. The camera battery is beginning to get quite low as well. It's Tsukasa who gets the line about putting an end to his dream, which ties in extremely well with a certain event that I will talk about soon. We see the heart visual again, and a blue X is stamped over it. As they begin to deny their reality, we can see their internal temperature is rapidly rising as the errors continue to pour in and the memory tapes flash on the screen. Here is another part where Wondershow's cover differs from Nightcord's, as instead of this last part being left to the virtual singer, Wondershow continue to share the lines between themselves, with Rin only getting the final few lines to herself. And I think this is to show two things. One, that Wondershow are all robots just like Rin here, so they can keep singing until the end as well. And two, Wondershow are always in it together, so it shows just how closely knit they are as a friend group. However, as Rin is finishing up her lines, we can see that their temperature has exceeded 90 degrees, and Rin looks down, knowing that there's nothing more they can do. We get one last shot of Wondershow's smiling faces, and while they might be smiling here, Yoda managed to draw them in a way that still captures that hint of sadness in their smiles, since they know that this will be their final show together. So it's like a bittersweet goodbye. The battery in the top right flashes, about to run out, and then for a fraction of a second, we can see the internal temperature reach 99.99, before immediately turning blue and returning to 0, meaning that once the limit was exceeded, the robots shut down. This is enforced by the fact that the next thing we see is all of Wondershow with their eyes closed. And then on the end screen, the battery is empty and Wondershow are gone, with only ruins and the black hole remaining. But right at the end of the video, a blue symbol appears and swipes to the left of the screen. And if you were paying attention, you may have noticed that this blue symbol appears a couple times prior to this as well. I'm not too sure what the significance of this blue colour used throughout the MV is. Maybe someone smarter than me can work it out, but it's there. Also, this is probably because they used the same backing track or arrangement or whatever, but at some points during the last part you can still hear Kaito on the track, which is kind of funny to me, and that's Wondershow's 2D MV. Now, at first, Wondershow singing a song about the end of the world doesn't seem very in character for them. It's definitely not the kind of song they would usually sing, but that's what makes their version so unique. Unlike Nightcord, who are frozen by fear, Wondershow are seen smiling in their last moments. And this ties in with a lot of different things. Firstly, with the lore of Robopiece, who we know are humanoids built for the sole purpose of making humans smile. But in the context of this song, there aren't any humans left. So instead, they turn to each other and put on a show for themselves. One final show that has no audience. Secondly, the song that I can imagine them singing here is The World Hasn't Even Started Yet. Because while this song on its own has a positive message, when you pair some of the lyrics with the context of the Heat Up Normal 2D MV, they kind of take on a much darker tone. And then thirdly, Wondershow have actually already had an apocalyptic landscape show up in their story before, in Tsukasa's 6th focus event, Deep Dark for Light. And this event specifically pairs really well with Heat Up Normal, like to an unexpected degree. In this event, Tsukasa struggles with his role because it requires him to fall into complete despair. He then finds the television left on one night, and overhears reports on the news about a war breaking out in another country. How, very topical of you, proseka. But hearing these reports makes Tsukasa realize that not everything is sunshine and rainbows. And some people have their lives entirely disrupted by things that are completely out of their control. So Tsukasa comes to the conclusion that the moment he would fall into complete despair would be the moment that he has to give up on his dream. Tsukasa's dream of becoming a star is everything to him, and he's so devoted to achieving it that the only situation that he can imagine himself giving up on it is if the very world itself changed. And this is how we get the previously mentioned apocalyptic landscape. It's very over the top, but it's Tsukasa we're talking about. While on stage performing, Tsukasa goes full method actor and starts imagining a version of Japan that's been thrown into ruin. And in that world, there is no hope of Wondershow's shows reaching anyone, or putting a smile on anyone's faces. This is all just an act though, and Tsukasa's character is pulled out from the depths of despair by the audience, and the show has a happy ending. However, in the context of Heat Up Normal, there is no such happy ending to be found, which only makes the fact that Tsukasa gets this lyric all the more heart-wrenching. Lastly, there is one more thing that I want to talk about, and that's the human Rui theory. Not long after the MV and April Fool's event dropped, many people started to point out the possibility that Rui may actually be the only human amongst RoboPeace. And if true, this would add a new massive layer of angst on top of everything else. Now, while this theory is pretty easily disproven by the fact that Rui has a design sheet just like everyone else, the most compelling piece of evidence, in my opinion, is the chibi artwork of RoboPeace. So let's bring that up again. Look at everyone's legs here, and then look at Rui's. He's the only one wearing pants to give the illusion of robot joints. And not only that, but he's the only one with white pupils. Everyone else has light blue. Other evidence that I've seen people point out is that the ring in his eyes is duller than everyone else's in the 2D MV, but this could just be because of his eye color. Because the ring is still there, it's just not as prominent. And I've also seen people say his eyes don't glow on his sprite in-game, but this is false. His eyes do glow in the same way as everyone else's. It's just harder to see, again, because of his eye color. So this chibi artwork really is the only thing that I can't explain. Why is he like that? Does the artist know something that we don't? Whether it's true or not, I think that human Rui theory is pretty cool, since it would imply that being left alone, after looking back on all the memories of Wondershow, Rui created these robot versions of his friends to keep him company. The angst factor is just so good, it's like an AU of an AU. But anyways, I am going to stop yapping now. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your own thoughts or interpretations of the Heat Up Normal 2D MVs in the comments. Which version do you prefer, etc, etc. Personally, I still prefer Nightcord's cover overall, but Wondershow's is such a unique and unexpected take on the song that I of course love it too. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. By the way, was anyone else a little disappointed that Nightcord got Vampire? Don't get me wrong, the cover and MV are great and all that. But I just think it would have been funnier if they got Konton Boogie or something.